let me grab the mic so I can get out and free up a spot again. So let's say I've got this, my canonical 200 person user data set in the test data, and it's
Zoom,
got,
please.
oh yeah, gotta see this. It's got country, state, and zip. It doesn't have county. That's annoying. This new button that Kai put this button in. So it's because of collaboration between me and Kai. I've got random CSV that I found on the internet. I upload it, gives me a preview with the data. There's my CSV. It changed the column order. I've got to fix that. But there it is. It's a view. It's got fields. It didn't generate a count field. It should generate a count field. Got to fix that. But like, I'll leave this tab alone. But if I pop over here, there, got to make a topic for it. So topic only users can query it, but got to make the topic special so they don't get locked out. Lots to do, but this right now is it works here, so I can do, whatever. Date, how many distinct cats. So this query for reference, just to like orient, this is, even though I'm in a workbook on Postgres, this query is just running entirely on DuckDB on top of the uploaded CSV. But then the important thing, right? This is a fun toy. I can query my CSV data. Not that interesting. What's more interesting is I can pop over here, say, I want this county, which is what's it ended up being C here. I did memorize which one this was.
I think you need C1, or maybe this will work anyway.
I think this works. How I write my XLOOKUPs, Colin. It corrects it for you. And again, random data set I downloaded from the internet. No idea why it doesn't have zip code for this, but I checked. It's not a bug. It just doesn't. Some of these have some of the zip codes. Garbage in, garbage out. But the important thing is that the XLOOKUP worked. Just to kind of, again, orient yourself, like it's right. So we've run the main query on Postgres, and then we've stitched together on DuckDB with the kind of just tweaking the way we plan the X lookups. And I mean, in theory, I don't want to push my luck, but it's not a toy arbitrary thing should continue to work. So if I just, this is probably not going to give me any data at all. Did I group by state? Don't remember. Something happened. I think that was to count the distinct cities within the state or something. So right, 2x lookups, you can stitch together multiple X lookups into CSVs. I didn't make multiple X lookups between DB queries and X lookups into the CSVs work. That needs to be done.
Stephen, could you, I mean, I believe this works, but if you go into the camel tab, I'm assuming we can just graph that and put it on a dashboard too.
Yeah. It's just a query. It's a normal query.
Yeah.
Can we share the CSVs across other workbooks, or is it just this one?
So yeah, I mean, I haven't. So there's a lot to do around like the life cycle management of these, but if you, oh gosh, no, give me the field picker. So this looks like a normal view, except it's got this thing, which is read only, and it's just this sort of identifier, like what was this uploaded as? And I haven't even tried this, but there's no reason it wouldn't work. So let's try it.
And while
Like
this
where it
is
still runs.
happening, where does this live right now? The CSV?
So it's in S3. So it's in S3, and we use the same mechanism that we use to load cache results. It's the same deal basically. When the planner kicks in and goes, "Oh, you planned something with one of these external uploaded tables. Let me grab that and stuff it into DuckDB for you, and run the query." But yeah, I think that worked. So I pop into, I promoted that geodata. It's there. That's not interesting query. I can remake my super interesting distinct city query. And so the thing that needs to happen is there needs to be an admin page listing these, and you need to be able to delete them. And that's where it gets a little hairy, because it's like, if you promoted one, how do you kind of say, like, how would you say it's okay to delete one? And then we also need to do more work to have the backend know if one then gets deleted, because like right now they're just there and the backend just knows the S3 path and can go look them up. There needs to be like a validator error. If you go then, oh, I don't want that data to be there, I delete it. We need to put a validator error on that view, and that's going to take a little bit of management. To make that work.
Even is there a size limit to that CSV upload right now?
Yes. So we decided to kick this off with a 50, I mean, actually, no, because I haven't implemented it, but there will be. There's going to be a 50K row limit. So just like, we'll just because the way it works is when you hit that upload button in the UI, we actually stick it in DuckDB and transform it into Arrow there. And so we'll hit that with a limit 50K and say like, oh, you went over either warn or block. But yeah, there's no, right now we don't yet support arbitrary upload size.
Thank you.
Hey, Stephen, when you say it's using DuckDB, I assume that you mean in the browser.
No, on the server.
Oh, great.
Yeah. The results have been uploaded to S3, and just like the server side requery cache results, if it behaves in a very, very similar way, where if we plan a query and then we optimize it and we realize that it needs to requery some server results that are stored in S3, we pull that down from S3 and put it in DuckDB and then run the server side requery on top of that. Same thing with here. Like it needs an external table. It's in S3. We pull it down from S3, stuff it in DuckDB, and run the query on top of that.
Cool.
And
Yeah, I was just going to remind
sorry.
that occasionally we have to disable DuckDB in the browser. So glad to hear that it's not running there.
Do we have all the usual stuff on these? Like, can I add new columns that are, first character of state, put calcs on top of them, all that jazz?
Yeah, because it's all just. I mean, there might be some confusion around like dialect.
Like what type
specific.
of SQL are? Yeah, I was going to say like what
Yeah,
type of SQL are you
there's
writing
definitely
to it?
that could cause confusion. That would be a good argument for the old Omni SQL. But yeah, so if you tried to write dialect specific SQL, it's possible the planner could get confused. We could put in code that attempted to to translate some SQL as best we could. But yeah,
It's DuckDB SQL right now. What would it be?
it would be DuckDB SQL.
Okay.
It's hard for me to think of an example because Postgres and DuckDB share a lot of functions, but
can you actually open the SQL editor and edit the SQL directly? Like, can I just query this table in DuckDB?
that is almost certainly not going to work. But
Okay.
let's try it. Hey, it worked. Never mind. The system is solid. No, I mean, yeah, because it made a new field. Concat it's probably a little confused under the hood about which dialect concat is running in, but it doesn't matter. It works in DuckDB. That's a more universal one. So I think if you stick to universal-ish operators, it'll work.
This is sort of an argument though for the Omni SQL stuff, especially some of the stuff we talked about in the past. Where we had like it's probably pretty close to DuckDB SQL, but like a really generic SQL language that you can always write in, and we will always be able to translate that, and also always be able to parse that. Could be something we worth chatting about.
It's all
Yeah, I think that tends to be more of an us problem than a customer problem. Like if the customer has Snowflake, they pretty much want to write Snowflake SQL.
The other thing I was going to say is, like, Steve, we've been chatting about a future step of being able to push down these tables into the customer's warehouse. So like if they're on BigQuery, push to BigQuery. If they're on Snowflake, which would negate that problem, because I assume in that case they're just writing their dialect SQL anyways. And the other thing that will eventually open up is also true SQL joins, right, instead of just X lookups to match this to other data. So that's like a future phase that we'll want to do, as probably the primary gesture in most cases is best to push down. And the question I had there, Stephen, back to like the file size limits, in a world where we do push down to warehouse, do you anticipate that we could loosen up those size limits substantially?
Yes, although that's not the primary reason the file size limit exists today.
Okay.
It's actually more about the upload mechanism.
Yeah.
It doesn't stream.
Makes sense. Cool.
I actually had a question on the file size limit. So one thing that's common when like exporting Excel data to CSV is you can end up with a lot of blank rows below. And so you could end up having, many superfluous rows. Like, do we do any kind of CSV truncation before we enforce that 50K row limit?
Great question. Basically, what we'll do is when we ask Duck, we put the CSV in the browser, and then we ask DuckDB to query it. And so like whatever DuckDB does, we will do. It's partly why that's a good argument for maybe starting off with doing a select star limit 50,000, and then rather than failing if you hit 50,000, just putting a little warning like, hey, we truncated this. And if you're like, there's not 50,000 rows, I don't care, then maybe that's the way to go. But it's a good call out to check that.
Yeah, yeah, that totally makes sense. Like a select top 50,000 from DuckDB, and then are empty cells null or empty string? Just out of curiosity.
You gotta ask DuckDB. Whatever DuckDB thinks they are. It possibly depends on data type. Maybe they're empty string for strings, but null for, because DuckDB will detect data types from the CSV. So it's possible that if it thinks it's a number, then it has to be null, or if it's a string, maybe it's empty.
Okay, but yeah, that makes perfect sense then, that we're inheriting all the defaults from DuckDB. So,
And it's very possible that we could make this configurable. The like DuckDB CSV process is extremely configurable, and I'm sure the defaults are intelligent and they're supposedly extremely fast as well. But you may want to say, no, actually parse all of this stuff as dates, or parse all of this stuff as strings, even though they look like dates, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll just have to expose the things that are important that we want to actually get.
And then how are we handling data types here? I'm assuming the answer is the default, but how it's like, are we just looking at it?
Well, DuckDB is just looking at it, doing the defaults, and then as Johnny says, I think there is a lot of fine-grained control that you could do by tweaking DuckDB settings, so we could expose that for the user. But
like for one of these, we could same thing in the data model. We could just go in like whatever DuckDB's cast is, and we can turn the string into a timestamp type thing.
Totally. And even and there again because the whole system is probably a little confused about what dialect it's in, but like we do some translation, some things like I bet this will work. Even though we use the Postgres cast syntax, we kind of parse it out. We're like, it's a cast, then we put it back in and it worked.
Cool. Huge.